Good afternoon. I'm David Mancuso with Mancuso Show Management. I'm here with another exciting live interview all the way to San Francisco this afternoon here. There's only one word that comes to mind when I think about this, and the word is quintessential. And the meaning of quintessential is to be representing the most perfect, pure example of. Is basically the definition of that word. And so I'm here this afternoon with a quintessential gentleman who is a quintessential quilter and musician in the city of San Francisco. And so that's the word that comes to mind when I think about Joe Cunningham. Welcome, Joe.
Thanks. Geez. I want to put that on my business card.
You can't steal it.
Quintessential. I like it.
So tell everybody, where are you right now?
So I'm in my gallery studio. I was lucky enough a few months ago to get a lease on a place that used to be an art gallery, and I needed a new studio. And so I moved in and I get to hang my quilts all over, and it's got plenty of room for my frame if I hand quilt something like I'm doing right now. It's got room for my long arm, and it's got room for everything that I need. So that's where I'm at, right on Market Street in downtown San Francisco.
Beautiful. Are you far from where you live?
I walked over this morning, and it takes me 38 minutes.
Okay, that's good. It'll keep you in shape too.
That's right.
Hilly
Up and
San
over a hill.
Francisco area. So
that's right.
If I'm not mistaken, are you a native to San Francisco? Native to California?
No, I've lived here for 28 years, but I'm from Flint, Michigan.
Oh, you and Michael Moore.
That's right. I know Michael. We were the same age, and we got started in all this together. Yeah.
Wow, that's very interesting. So tell us a little bit about. I have a picture of you here. You're a kid in this. Tell me a little bit about you as a creative young adult. Everyone knows you're also a musician. So.
All from the time I was conscious, all I ever cared about was books and music and art. That was like where my head always was. And so, and then I learned in high school when I had started playing professionally. I started playing in nightclubs when I was 15. But what I really wanted to do was to make art. And my art teacher explained to me that I had no talent for it. I couldn't draw, my sculptures were pathetic, and she said I should just give it up. So I did. What do I care? I'm a guitar player, I'm my own kind of artist here. And what I like to do was to read about art and read criticism and artist biographies and all that stuff, and go to museums. And so I just thought, I can study art. What do I care if I ever get to make it or not, And then when I found quilts, it was a way that I could make this stuff that seemed sort of like art, but it wasn't intimidating like making art would be. So anyway, that was when I was 26.
You were 26. Okay, I was going to ask you that. That's
yeah.
My next question. So how did you become introduced to the quilting? Quilt art.
I was on a gig playing in a bar, and a woman came in and introduced herself to me, and she needed a guitar player on some folk music gigs. And her name was Gwen Marston. And over at Gwen's house for rehearsals, I saw these boxes of things, and her hobby was quilt making. And she was engaged in this project where she had to photograph a whole bunch of quilts. And so I asked if I could see these quilts. Some of them were very early 1800s quilts. It was a beautiful collection. And they knocked me out. And she needed help writing the catalog for this. And I had 1 year of college, of a community college, studying English. And so I knew pretty much everything there was to know about writing. And so, as you can imagine. And so I offered to write the catalog for her. And she said, well, you'd have to learn about quilts. And so I read all the books that were available. This was in 1979. I read all 5 books that had any information about quilt history and stuff. And then she came over to my house one night with a little crib quilt in the drunkard's path pattern. I don't know what made her think of that. Anyway, and big thimble and needle and thread, and said, if you're going to write about quilts, you should know how to quilt. And so she taught me the rocking stitch that I still use. And then in a few weeks, I wanted to make quilts myself. And then we teamed up and decided to become professional in 1980.
Right. Well, I know that for many years, in the early days for us, we certainly hired both you and Gwen, and
Yeah.
you had quite the gig there, and it was interesting. You probably traveled to many shows, I'm sure, and I know you did several of ours.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The circuit, it was kind of a wave, wasn't it? That we got to, you and I both got to ride. I mean, you're still riding it. Well, we're both still riding it. But anyway, from the late 70s, this quilt revival started to take off. It just exploded after the bicentennial in 1976. It started to take off. And this idea of shows and conferences that you guys were pioneers in started to take off just as we were becoming professionals. And so you get on the circuit, and yeah, we worked every state in the country. Yeah, worked all over.
Let me ask you a little bit about the creative aspect of what you do.
Sure.
Do you sketch before you design? How do you come up with a design to begin with?
Well, like my art teacher said, I don't draw too good. I mean, I've learned to draw a little bit, but anyway, no, I don't make any sketches. The way I make a quilt is I think of a theme. There's something that I want to make a quilt about, and I pick out fabric that that I think would work to make something, and I have no idea what it's going to look like at that point. And I work with the fabric. And as soon as I start cutting and sewing, so I make one cut and I sew these two pieces of fabric together, and then I'm off. Then everything's a design problem after that to solve. And I learn what it's going to look. I find out what it's going to look like by making it.
That's very interesting, because that's a very different answer than I normally get. A lot of people do sketch first or photograph first. So I would say that would be equal to playing music by ear, creating the quilts by fabric. And so did you basically learn to be a musician by ear?
Yeah, I'm a terrible reader of music. I can read music, but it's more of a deciphering of it. If you put a piece of music in front of me, there's an old musician's joke. How you get a guitar player to turn down? You put a chart in front of them. And that's the way I am. I have to figure it out. Okay, that's an A. Okay, and then it goes to B, and like that. So, but I play by ear. I can play almost anything by ear, except not classical music, of course, but almost any form of music I can play by ear. And that's how I learned. So it all goes together, and I like to improvise in music and in quilts. Yeah.
Very different way of going about it. So
yeah.
So your inspiration really just comes from within.
Well, yeah, it comes from the without. Actually, it comes from the world. Okay. The one that I'm working on right now is called two-party system. It's made out of only two fabrics, and then I'm embroidering a jungle all over it. I mean, I'm quilting flowers, leaves, and thorns and plants all over it. It's going to be a jungle, and it's going to be called two-party system. So
you've got the greatest titles. So
all right.
we have a quilt here called Auto World.
Auto World.
Yeah. Tell us. I mean, how did that come about? How did that title come about?
Well, the way it came about was thinking about in Flint, as General Motors. Flint was the home of General Motors. When I was a boy growing up, it was it's the county seat of Genesee County, and it was the highest per capita income in the whole country in the 60s, in the 50s and 60s, because of the union jobs, you know. And so as General Motors learned to fight the union and to move its stuff elsewhere and to leave Flint, the economy started going down, you know. So somebody had the brilliant idea, it was the Mott Foundation actually, it had the brilliant idea of building a theme park called Auto World. So they demolished the beautiful old theater downtown, the 5,000 seat auditorium, and they built this dome within which was the most entertaining theme park you can imagine, where it even had a walk-through version of the assembly line, and which was just cartoony stuff. And it had a V8 engine that you could see the pistons going up, and they projected about 1 million visitors a year. And I think the first year they got like 5,000 or something. It could not have gone any worse. It was the stupidest thing. It was called Auto World, and their mascot was Fred the carriageless horse, which just rolls off your tongue, you know. Anyway, Auto World, it's a symbol of something or other. And so, and my dad, he worked for Buick, putting starter motors on engines for 35 years on the assembly line. This has been on my mind a lot, you know. So my wife and I went on vacation, and we went to Italy. And all around Italy, as you know, are these signs of a defunct civilization, the ancient Roman civilization. And when we left there, we flew straight to Flint to see my parents. And when I got off the plane, I looked around and I saw all these signs of a defunct civilization there. So I decided to make a quilt that would have signs of both those defunct civilizations. And Auto World seemed like a good name for a defunct civilization.
It's a fun quilt. I notice you have a quilt behind you on the wall that's called Memo to Lucy. And
Yes.
we have an image of that. So what is the memo to Lucy?
One of my good friends is Lucy Mingo. She's from in Gee's Bend. So she's one of the Gee's Bend quilters, one of the elder ones. And whenever I go down there, which I've been down there 3 or 4 times, I always get to hang out with Lucy. She's one of my favorite people. And she once made a quilt that was all white, just unbleached muslin. And on it, she quilted her signature kind of arcs, fans, you know. And I loved it. That was because usually an all white quilt, you know, it's going to be fancy. And this was just her free form arcs. And it's something that I loved. And I asked her permission. I said, Lucy, would you mind if a quilter out in San Francisco made a version of this? Oh, no, she said, that'd be fine. So I had it in my mind to do that. My friend Patricia sent me some Ecot wool. You can see it on the quilt. Is the quilt up right now on the screen?
Yes, it is.
Oh, good. So the stuff that looks like a swimming pool bottom on the lower part of the quilt, blue and white, is this fabulous fabric that my friend sent me. And then I decided what I wanted to do with it was to make Lucy's style of arcs, but instead of quilting them, I did them with bias tape. And in her style. And the top part, I was inspired by a painting by Stuart Davis called Memo. And so it's a Stuart Davis painting on top of a Lucy Mingo quilt, Memo to Lucy.
Yeah, very deep titles. Yeah, I have to hit you with another one. I have to hit you
All
with
right.
another Monument to Discarded Love. Now that's got to be deep. Okay.
Well, you know, all kinds of things that we love get discarded. Cars, especially, right? old that we might love our car, and sooner or later it gets discarded. People, sometimes we're in love with people and then we're not anymore and we discard them. Clothing, I mean, anything that we have in our lives, eventually that we might love, our computer, we often discard. And I wanted to make a monument to all of these things and people that are, and so what you can't see very well probably there is the quilting. What the quilting is I programmed in my computerized long arm cars being smashed like in a junkyard. There's a stack of crushed cars on, there's two stacks on that. You can see a BMW, you can see a Lincoln, you can see all kinds of cars, Corvair. And so that's what the quilting design is.
Yeah, it's tough to see that on the screen.
Yeah, you can't see it. And the band of things that go across the middle, there are discarded rags from a friend of mine that runs a printing press. And this is what he uses to clean his printing press off with. So those are discarded printing rags. And so I made them into this. So it's, and I wanted it to look monumental, you know, like this big thing. It's on display in at the Wisconsin Quilt Museum right now.
Very nice, very nice. So we have a few more that our producer can put up on the screen so everybody can see. We have New York Beauty. We have the Bermuda rectangle. Tell us about New York Beauty.
New York Beauty, if you know the pattern, you know, it's a classic pattern that has these spiky corners in all four corners of the grid. You know, it's a grid, and in each little square, it's got these spiky corners. And I decided to make my own spiky thing, but instead of doing 100 of them, I just wanted to do one. So I made it really big, and it goes down and swirls around the corner of the quilt. It's basically just two fabrics that I liked because I got them both off from the sale table, and they had nothing to do with each other. They didn't go together at all. They're highly contrasting. And I thought that would be perfect for this project. So this is one of a whole series of quilts that I've made where I just use the title of a quilt design, and then I make up my own version of it.
Okay, very good. So let me change gears here a minute, because
Sure.
One of the things I always say this that amazes me about quilters or quilt teachers, quilt artists, is traveling.
Yeah.
And there seems to be always plenty of it.
Yes.
So what would you say the most interesting place you ever traveled to? The place you like the most?
Yeah. I had a show a couple of years ago in Verona, Italy, you know, the home of Romeo and Juliet. And to go there and have a show in this grand palace there was the thrill of a lifetime. Yeah. So I would say that would be the most interesting.
And tell me, is Italy your favorite too?
I love Italy. I've very little traveled. All through the 80s, Gwen and I traveled all over this country, you know, but very, not any real international travel. And so it's only in the last 15 years or so that I've actually went to Europe for the first time. And I've been to Italy like 3 or 4 times now. And yeah, I love it. Yes.
Terry and my wife Terry and I, that is definitely our most favorite destination. And same here. We didn't really start traveling to about maybe 15 years ago. So we're out of the country. Well, we had children,
right,
of course, and you know,
yeah.
Yeah, because I always find it amazing how you know quilters do like to travel, and I think a good part of your inspiration comes from travel.
Oh yes.
So all of the, I'm going to hit you. I'll hit you a little bit with a surprise question. Maybe you have an answer for it. Maybe you don't. You know, but
all right.
But you know, you've obviously been to a lot of conventions.
Yes.
And you've taught in a lot of classes, and you've been on the
Uh-huh.
floor of the show. And so, what's the
Yeah.
craziest thing or the funniest thing that's ever happened to you at a convention? Do you
Uh,
have any
and it
stories to
can,
tell on that?
well, uh, you know, uh, oh my goodness.
Did I hit you wrong?
No, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is getting openly propositioned in one of my classes. That was startling. Um, um,
It must be that
uh,
quintessential thing.
yeah, the quintessential thing. Um, uh, oh, geez, at a
Well, that
conference.
first one was a whopper. That was pretty.
Oh, I taught at a convention one time in New Hampshire where uh, we were coming in the same day as the lecture, and we're going to be there at the lecture 7 o'clock that night. Our flight out of Boston was delayed, and it was a small plane. There was, I think, just like 20 seats, and it was a propeller plane. And we were headed for New Hampshire, and a storm came up, and it was one of those where you thought you were going to die. So all of a sudden we sink down 300 feet, and then we're back up, and there, and everybody's freaking out. People are crying and hysterical, and it's just like one of the most freaky events I've ever been through in my whole life. And we got there in time to get picked up at the airport and taken directly to the stage. And so, to
You're like
go
this.
from the, yeah, and to walk on stage and try to be entertaining and informative was,
That's tough when it gets
yeah,
dropped right on you like that.
yeah.
That's a good travel story. So you have time to show us your studio?
Yeah,
Okay.
here I do. Let me, I'm going to try to just carry my uh, um, phone around. Okay, so as you can see, I'm on Market Street, and
Beautiful.
it's an old-fashioned storefront here that got turned into an art gallery at a certain point, and I get to hang up my quilts here. I face north, and so I like the light here very much. It does reflect off from a building across the street. Um, I needed a place to store my quilts when I moved in here, and I don't like to fold them. So a friend of mine designed this A-frame for me. It's just made out of 2x4 and nails, basically. Uh, and I get to hang 24 quilts on my rack here. I'm so proud of that. I have my guitar, of course, when I need a little break from quilting. I have my long arm, my handy quilter, computerized long arm. I do a lot of computerized quilt designs. Like on this one, this is from traveling. This is a photograph I took out of a plane. The quilting design here is that's an Iowa farm town in the winter. So you can see the rivers and the roads and the all over. This is a quilt called Rest. So anyway, then here's one of my favorite things. It used to be an art gallery, so they had an artist do an installation in the bathroom. Those are the tanks made out of felt, which you don't see that every day. Then here's my workroom, a custom-made work table that's 4 feet high. So it's just I'm a tall person, so this is perfect for me to work at. Regular height tables are not good, so I can cut here and sew with my new sewing machine there, and press with my Laura Star iron over there. And this is my little pressing station. My library, I study quilt history still a lot, and fabrics and so on. And my design wall, there's a quilt that's called Michigan Winter. You'll never believe what that's about. Uh, and I have a utility room with a
Wow.
utility sink. I can wash stuff in, a refrigerator to keep my beverages cold, and a storeroom. You can see here, I store my books. I have many copies, for some weird reason, left over of Men and the Art of Quilt Making. It's a fascinating topic, and you would have thought more people would have bought that book.
Well, they will now.
And these are boxes of my latest book, Joe Cunningham Quilts, that you can find on my website,
Okay.
right there,
Okay.
which is called Joe Cunningham Quilts. Anyway, quilt storage, my own old quilts, antique quilts, quilt tops, and so on. Everything meticulously organized according to certain organizational principles.
How many square feet you have there? That's quite the size space.
It is. I never have figured it out. Somebody told me that they thought it was about 3,000 square feet.
It seems really big, and
Yeah.
that's got to be a tough thing to find in San Francisco.
It's because, I just, every day I feel so much gratitude for the collapse of San Francisco retail. It makes places like this
That's a shame.
possible
Right.
for me to afford a lowly quilt maker. And so what I'm going to do, David, is I'm going to have, I can't run this as a retail gallery. The bathroom is not ADA, and I don't want to. I don't want to be a gallery owner. But I can have my own quilts on the walls, and I can have an art opening. I can have a show opening. And then I'm going to have other quilters, friends of mine, will be able to have shows, and we'll have an opening, and invite. It'll be invitation only. But it's hard when you're a quilt maker to find a gallery space where you can show your quilts.
It looks like a great space. It really
Yep.
is a great space.
Very lucky.
The only challenge that you have right now is you showed me your guitar.
Yeah.
That's the
All
only
right.
challenge you have right now, because you know what I'm going to ask you to do.
Oh, no. Don't tell me. Oh, no.
Oh, yes.
This is my studio guitar. It's just, it's a Japanese copy of a Martin D28 that I'm very fond of. You want a song? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me poll the audience. You want a song? They want a song.
About 20 years ago, I wrote a musical called Joe the Quilter, and it tells the life story of Joe Headley, who was a real guy that was born in northern England in 1750, died in 1830, and so I did this musical a couple hundred times all over the country, and so this is a song from that musical. He was a tailor who at some point in his life became a quilt maker and was known for the rest of his life as Joe the Quilter, which is where I got my nickname from. And so this is a song called Make Me a Quilt. Make me a quilt, make me a quilt. My sister-in-law just got one from France, and I gotta have one before she comes over again. Make me a quilt, make it blue. Not too light, but not too dark, just, blue. Make me a quilt, make it thick, but not so thick that you lie under it and sweat and throw it off on the floor in the middle of the night. Just, like regular. Make me a quilt. I know your work At least I saw a shirt you made one time. It didn't really do anything for me, but I think you could do it by later next week. How hard could it be? Make me a quilt. Make me a quilt. Make it nice. But not so nice that you leave it folded up in a drawer somewhere because you never want to use it. Just, kind of nice. Make me a quilt. Make it big. But not so big that you lie under it and sweat and throw it off on the floor in the middle of the night. Just regular size. Make me a quilt. I'll have the money by later next week. I've got a hen that's laying real well. And once people see what good work you can do, you might get more orders you never can tell. So make me a quilt. Make me a quilt. Make me a quilt. I hear that you're not too busy these days, so you might as well do it. You might as well go on and make me a quilt. Make me a quilt. There you go.
Wonderful. Bellissimo, bellissimo. Great. Thank you for doing that. It takes it very
Sure.
personal. So where's Joe Cunningham off to next? I know that you're doing online workshops because I'm inviting you right now to do one for us.
Oh, all right. Let's work that out.
A few for us.
Yeah. So you can, if you go to my website, joecunninghamquilts.com, there's my monthly, I do a once a month online class called the Quilt Freedom Workshop. And you can find out all about that, find out all about my new book. And the next place I'm going to be in person is the Madeline Island Art School in August. I'm teaching up there. So until then, I'm just going to be right here playing the occasional gig at the little pizza joint and stuff like that.
Great. And
Making quilts.
Right.
Quilting away.
Right.
And yeah, all my quilts are for sale there, and that's on my website too. You can see the pictures of them and find out all about that.
Great. Well, it's always wonderful. We go back quite a few years here.
We do, David. It's really, really nice to stay in touch and to see you. Yeah.
It's great to see you.
Appreciate
Well, you just taught for us I think just 2 years back in San Francisco, at the Pacific International Quilt Festival. Right?
Yes, that's right.
I'm losing track of time, but we have what we call year erased. We had a year erased. So I'm having a hard time figuring out when I was on site last, and we're hoping to be on site again pretty soon.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. It's a high point of the year around here is the Pacific International. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a fun show. It belongs to the Bay Area. It doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the Bay Area. It is a fun show. Well, Joe, I want to thank you very much for doing this. This has been a lot of fun, and it's always great.
Pleasure is all mine.
Thank you.